Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday webinar. As everybody's getting into the Zoom call, hello, I'm Kristen. I'm the Creative Director of Swaim Strategies. It's great to be here with you all today. Go ahead and jump in that chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. We're here in Portland, Oregon, where it's trying to be sunny today. I know there's a lot of atmospheric rivers out there. There's some snow out there. Where are you tuning in from today? Everybody loading in. We're excited to be here today to talk to you about the 3 keys to $1 million event. I'm here with our Strategic Director, Samantha Swaim, who is going to take us through how you can transform the fundraising at your next event. Sunshine Division in Portland, love it. Africa Bridge in Portland, yay. Well, let's get kicked off today. We must thank our amazing partners who make this free education available to all of you every month. I'd like to send a special thanks out to Bloomerang, the Fundraising Event Company, Next Day Animations, and ZP Productions. We are not going to have a December webinar, but we will be back in January with the absolutely amazing Meena Das, who is going to come and talk to us about the AI Equity Project report. This is critical information for all of us in the nonprofit sector. So please keep a lookout, register for the webinar, and we'd love to see you there. We started Swaim Strategies over 20 years ago because we believed in the transformational power of events. We also believe in getting people the tools they need to make this transformation happen in all of their organizations. We specialize in education. We've got a book. We have a fundraising event conference, March 3rd and 4th, 2026 here in Portland or anywhere virtually you can check out. We also have a production subsidiary, the Fundraising Event Company, who can help bring your events to life. We're also super excited about our podcast. And today's conversation about $1 million event is really supported by last week's episode of the Fundraising Elevator podcast, where we talked to Brandon Lindsay about his strategy to make that happen at the organization he was at. So available wherever you get your podcast, be sure to check it out. I'm going to kick it over to Sam, who's going to take us through all the amazing strategy.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all today to talk about $1 Million fundraiser. I see a couple of Firefly note takers in, and I am going to bump those out. We are recording today's content, so we will be sure to send you the recording if there is anything that you missed. But we want to dive into the potential that your event has to be able to really mobilize big, huge philanthropy, especially now, especially as we're seeing shifts. We're seeing things like loss in revenue from grants and federal funds. We want to make sure that you're prepared to be able to really leverage your gathering. A couple of key things that I want to kick off with. I want to make sure that we kind of understand why gathering. At the core of mobilizing our donors and engaging them in our mission, I think the most important thing that we want to think about is the fact that an event is an opportunity to invite people in. It is not the easiest way to raise money, but it is a way to invite people in to participate in our mission. And an event is an opportunity to build those relationships and create a shared experience. That shared experience is an opportunity for folks to really feel your mission, to understand your mission in a way that they might not be able to as simply receiving your email communications or your newsletters. But beyond that, it's also an opportunity to be together. It's an opportunity to be a part of something and feel like you're a part of community. It allows you to build networks of like-minded individuals and really tap into that most powerful feeling of belonging. So as Kristen said, we have a couple of podcasts in a row that are all tapping into this. Brandon Lindsay last week talked about how he leveraged this $1 million strategy. This week we have Chris Miano talking all about the power of storytelling. And next week we have Rhodes Perry talking all about belonging. That is because we feel like that is the trifecta. Those three things coming together can really move your event from being a moment of gathering to a moment of mission building, really creating a movement for your event. So let's get to the heart of fundraising at events. First, we like to dive into the research and get nerdy. So there are a couple of elements that I want to make sure to flag, and some smart people doing some really smart research. First, Susan Howlett. Susan Howlett is a researcher out of University of Washington that identified the need for us to understand why people give, what motivates them to give, what is sort of at the core of giving. And I'm hearing that my audio is really loud. Let me reset my audio. Hold on. We'll get that reset. Hopefully that's better. Okay. Sorry about that. So at the core of the solutions of identifying why people give, Susan Howlett interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens of donors over time to find out what were the things that motivated them and inspired them to be a donor. And I think we all assume that being a good person and making a difference because we believe in the mission is at the core of why people give. And yet that is not the sort of only reason why people give. People also identified that they gave because they wanted to be a part of something, and they gave to be known, to be recognized, to be celebrated. We will never be able to convince someone to give. Manipulating someone's beliefs around a mission, that's not something that's possible. But inviting them in and engaging them in a way that celebrates them is possible. And so the benefit of this research is that it teaches us that at an event, we can do all three of these things. Interestingly enough, the other thing that we've discovered is that Chronicle Philanthropy did a research study about the mode of giving, how people prefer to give, and more than 80% of major donors indicated that they prefer to give at an event for these reasons. Unfortunately, sometimes I think we miss the opportunity for the event to be a mechanism for giving. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's dive into some really smart people doing some really incredible research that we like to pull into our teaching and our philosophies about events. First, I want to dive into the work of Paul Zak, Immersion. Immersion is a philosophy by social neuroscientist Paul Zak that when we really truly are enjoying something, when we really truly feel a sense of connection and belonging and are immersed in an event, it moves us to act. It is addressing that fundamental question of what moves people to take action. We're not only looking at Paul Zak, though. We also have two thought leaders that we love to partner with, Tammy Zonker and Chireen Koshy. Tammy Zonker is looking at the human design aspect of fundraising, and Chireen Koshy at the neurogiving, the neuroscience of fundraising. And all of this work dovetails into the fact that at an event, we have the ability to mobilize people. And mobilizing people to give is something that sometimes I think we leave out of our events. We think about the feathers, we think about the design, we think about the theme, but sometimes we forget that the simplicity of our own mission and diving into or immersing people in our work is the easiest act we can take with a call to action to give. So trends have been shifting. We're seeing that folks are moving away from the stuff. They're moving away from lots of silent auction items and lots of games, and they're moving more toward the interpersonal connection, the storytelling, and that call to action. The reason is that a lot of the science indicates to us that when we have that call to action, it actually invites us in a way that as donors, we feel a sense of relief. So let me walk through Paul Zak's frame briefly. He uses a frame he calls CERTA. This is his belief of, through lots of years of research, that a good event, a good interaction, something that feels rewarding and successful to the guest, includes each of these elements. The first one is staging. Staging invites us in, it makes it easy to participate, and it allows the brain to be attentive. It allows the brain to sort of quiet the nervous energy of what's expected of me, what am I supposed to do, and now I can sit and be attentive. The second he indicates is immersion. Immersion in an event, storytelling and connection through stories indicates to the brain that this has value. The third is relevance. Is it something that is shareable? Is it something that I leave there telling other people about? The fourth is target. Are there people of influence? Did I get invited here by a table host? Are people I know in the room also giving? That creates a lot of influence in the room. And finally, the fifth key element that has to be included for a great immersive experience is action. And that's the one we want to talk about today because it actually triggers a sense of relief in the brain. When we invite folks to take action, to give on behalf of the mission, that is our call to action that says you are asked to be a part of this mission and you are welcome in. Oftentimes we see events that share stories of need, but miss the opportunity for someone to be a part of that impact. So let's talk about the biology of what's happening in that moment. The moment when we ask people to give generously and they raise a paddle. It's a call to action that says to the brain, you can be a part of this, but it's not as simple as just inviting people to do it. We have to understand that there are some biological functions at work. First, there is the concept of mirror neurons. Mirror neurons means it's contagious. It means that when people experience something together, the brain literally synchronizes to take action together. There's something really profound about showing people that this is easy to do and showing the emotional energy ripple that kind of takes over the room. It speaks louder than words that when one person raises their paddle, that it teaches people this is an organization to trust. It teaches people that this is easy to do, and it teaches people that we are giving now, so you should join us. It's a way to really help people understand the action to take. The second thing that Paul Zak dives into is the importance of the moral molecule. Oxytocin has been called the moral molecule because when oxytocin is released, it is frequently released through story. When we tell story, we release dopamine and oxytocin. When we witness story, experience story, we release dopamine and oxytocin. And when oxytocin is present, this is the moral molecule, it increases giving by 2 to 3 times what a donor would have given without the oxytocin involved. And it also increases the frequency of their giving. So if we are to send a letter in the mail, we don't always have that same ability to create an emotional moment of impact. But in a room, when we're able to tell a story and invite someone to the stage, we're able to have this surge of oxytocin and dopamine released that creates more giving and often keeps the donor giving over a longer duration of time, coming back to give again. And the third element happening in the brain and the body is that deeper sense of belonging. And I think belonging is really powerful. It's not something that's just baseline. You have to work to create it. It is a process. But when people feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connection, there is a palpable shift in which people have an increased sense of safety. They are able to co-create and identify solutions together and have a deeper sense of trust. So belonging becomes sort of the key element that once we've released the oxytocin and we have that moral molecule present, we want that sense of ease to participate, that sense of you are welcome to be a part of this. Without that, our brain has a sense of agitation, a sense of I need to participate, but I don't know how to participate. They're not inviting me to participate. So that paddle raise moment is a moment that allows us to have a sense of relief. Like, this is for me. I belong. This is a part of how I can be in the solution. But there's some elements to make sure are present. We want to make sure that our program is creating that emotional connection, that it's immersive. It's not just talking at a podium, but it's the use of color, it's the use of video, it's the use of every element of our theme being a part of our mission and demonstrating our mission. And that collective action is confirmation. It's not just an ask of extraction. It's not saying, please give us your resources. Instead, it's a confirmation of collective identity. And that's powerful. When we feel that sense of I'm part of something, I'm part of this, you will see giving surge and increase. And ultimately, at the root of it, collective action, a paddle raise, embodies the principles of community-centric fundraising, which is recognizing that transformation comes through collective ownership and action, meaning we all can do this. We all can raise those paddles. We all can affirm publicly that this is something I belong to. This is what community in action looks like. So how do you do it? There are 3 key elements we're going to talk about today. 1, your storytelling. Then we're going to talk about that call to action. And finally, we're going to talk about the strategy. And I want to talk about the strategy both from the perspective of, let's just do a paddle raise for the first time. And then how do we turn that paddle raise into $1 million fundraising event? So let's talk about the storytelling. First, there is this idea that your audience is being dropped into the middle of your event. And yet group dynamics show us that anytime we gather people together, including today here in this webinar, including any workshop, class, any meeting that you're in, you want to understand that people will engage not knowing what to anticipate. They will start to understand what to anticipate and their engagement will go up. And then at the height of their engagement, there will be a natural sense of, I have other things I need to think about of what's coming next, and their engagement will start to decrease. A lot of organizations wait until that decrease to make that ask. And I want to encourage you to think about that arc, that group dynamic is the same shape that you should build your event program in. Because the group dynamic is already happening. The group dynamic is already at play. So how do we make sure that your program is in alignment with that group dynamic versus fighting that group dynamic? The very first thing that we want to do is get everyone seated. If your audience isn't seated, they're not going to be able to participate. They're not going to feel comfortable. You're going to be shouting over them and trying to get their attention. So a seated, attentive audience, whether it's at a meal or it's theater style seating, does not matter. But we need enough seats for everybody to get focused. It tells our body and our brain we can relax now and pay attention because we know it's expected of us. When we have a socializing element and a program happening, it tells our brain we don't know what to participate in. It creates a little flood of panic, confusion, disinterest, and ultimately you're going to get blamed for this being disorganized instead of feeling like, oh, I understood what to do. Seating everyone down, bringing those lights down, bringing the stage lights up, all tell our brain that it can relax and participate fully. Then we need a welcome. Our first program element is to make sure everyone knows who we are, what we are there to celebrate, and to introduce an MC. That MC is our narrator. That MC is holding the audience's hand and taking them through the program. And that MC should have a personal story about their own connection to the work so that right away we get an understanding of what we're there to participate in and who this person is that is hosting us through this event. Then we need to move right into chapter 2. Without pause, without break, without a pause for dining, we can eat while the program is happening. We move right into chapter 2, which is about the organization. That is our storytelling show and tell. This is our opportunity to demonstrate this is why we do this work and this is why this mission matters. We typically include a video element that shows the programs and an executive director or board chair that is able to speak to the vision of the organization and be a face for the organization. So we've welcomed folks. Now we're talking to them about who we are and why our mission is so important. And then we go right into the fundraising. This is a fundraising event. Don't be afraid to put the business of your fundraising up front. If you have an element like a live auction, you can integrate that into this moment. But ultimately, the piece we're going to talk about today in this moment is your paddle raise. Then after your paddle raise, you can move into your celebration. This is your chance to have honorees. This is your chance to have entertainment. This is your chance to have a keynote speaker. And then finally, you close with a big bow on the end of your program that's like a big group hug full of gratitude. This is your chance to thank your sponsors, thank your board, thank your donors, thank your staff, and thank everyone who participated in today's program. This is a short program. It's not long. It's maybe an hour, maybe 90 minutes at the most, but it is focused on you, your mission, your story. It doesn't have to be stories of themes, of superheroes, of masquerade balls. It is stories of your mission, and your mission is enough, and your mission is worth funding. And that's why we have the paddle race, or the special appeal, or the fund a cause, or the fund a need, or the big buck item, or the pitch. It is your number one opportunity for fundraising, and it is a pure cash donation. But it is also an invitation in. It is your opportunity to raise unrestricted funds. It does not require that you have a ton of auction procurement to do, although I do recommend that we talk and dive deep into pre-committed gifts, having some pledges in advance. It allows you to build your major donor base and have a strategy for fueling your major donor pipeline while also increasing your donor satisfaction. Now, we have had events and organizations that have not had a paddle raise, and the year that they instituted their first paddle raise, their survey results went up, their donor satisfaction was through the roof, and board members and staff members and major donors were all indicating this was so good. And the reason was because it gave our brain relief to be a part of something. It's that meaningful moment of collective action that says we're doing this together. And that is an important element to incorporate when you've spent the time to gather people. It helps to answer the question of what is possible when we bring everyone together. Now, every paddle raise has 3 elements, and all 3 of these elements have to be included. A really good story, a clear call to action, and a collection strategy. And they all happen at the top of that arc, right in chapter 3. We don't separate them. We don't have a story and then have an entertainment. We don't have a paddle raise and in the middle of the paddle raise break for another video. We want all 3 of these elements, a story, an ask, and a collection, to all happen together. We want them to happen right after our show and tell about our mission. It is our moment to really help invite people into the impact of our work. So let's dive first into the story, because that is a critical element. The story we want to share is one person's story, one person's journey. It is so common for us to look at, but we have 4 programs, so we need 4 stories. But the human brain more actively attaches to a single journey. Additionally, when you only have a couple of minutes of their attention, you can tell a much richer single story than you can by telling multiple stories. Your show and tell moment about your organization, about your mission, that is your opportunity to tell the many, to tell about your programs, to tell about all the work you do. But this moment, this story for your fundraising, this is one person's personal journey in which the organization acted as a change agent. That traditional hero's journey where they were in search of something and the organization helped them to find it. I recommend diving into ethical storytelling for this because we want to make sure that when we're telling a client's story, that we are empowering them to use their voice, to tell their story, to be a full person, and that we are empowering them to have a story that also has rear view perspective. We never want to incite trauma. We never want to ask someone to tell their story while they're in the middle of their journey. Once they have recovered, once they have moved past the trauma and they have a rear view perspective, sharing a story can be a really healing, empowering experience. But we want to do it ethically. So we don't ever want to share a story that isn't with their consent, that isn't a healing and thoughtful, trauma-informed process, and empowers the individual in their storytelling. That story should also tap into the why. Why our work is so important. Why this mission. Our donors are smart enough to extrapolate the single to the many, to understand that this is one client we've served. It doesn't cover all our programs. It doesn't cover all of our services. This is one person's experience with us. And we want to talk to the why because when you look at our brain, Simon Sinek did a breakdown in his TED Talk about the human brain having 3 key processing centers. In the middle of our brain is where we light up when we are processing why. Why is this important? Why are we doing this work? Why is our belief center. Why is also our decision center. As we move out, we address the how and we address the what. So if we speak to people about our what, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. That is never as impactful as we believe in women's voices to lead change. We believe that every child in our community deserves a safe place to learn. A we believe statement and a story that demonstrates your belief leaves people in that beautiful center of their brain that is the decision-making part of their brain. But another research by Paul Slovic took a look at why we give when we are hearing a case study for giving. And his philosophy was, if I tell the story of many children in need, I will raise more than if I tell the story of one child in need. So he told the story of one child impacted by hunger in a community, and then told the story of many children impacted by hunger in the community. And then he asked for a donation. And in his research, every single time, the single story raised significantly more revenue. The many story raised hardly any revenue. And when they combined it and told the single story and said, but they are one of many, they raised about 50% less. So he looked at why is this? Why is this happening? And he interviewed participants and they said, if my dollar can make a difference, my $10 can make a bigger difference, my $100 could change this child's life. But when they looked at the many, they thought, I am not that wealthy. I cannot solve this problem. And so they chose not to give in some cases. They also took a look at the brain and what was lighting up in the brain at the time. And they found as soon as they entered a statistic into that story, it went from being personal and living in that center part of the brain and lighting up a flood of dopamine and oxytocin. And it immediately went to rational and moved to the exterior part of our brain and lit up the how and what part of our brain because we process statistics in a different part of our brain than the decision-making center. So before we ask for money, we want to make sure that the story is one person on a single journey of impact that can be able to speak to how your organization made a difference. Once we've told that story, we want to move into the ask. Now, first, that story had an immediate release and flood of dopamine on the brain. Oxytocin is now coursing through our veins. And we are at the height of that arc, that moment where our group is most attentive, is most invested. And at the height of that arc, we now invite our speaker, we bring the lights up and say, it is an honor to introduce our storyteller to the stage. And people think, oh, this is a real person in the room with us. And then that person starts to come down to the stage and the oxytocin increases and the surge of energy increases as they make their way to the stage. Then they turn around and have a real reaction because it's a human looking at other humans that are cheering for them after hearing their story. And sometimes that cheering responds in a tear or a giggle or a laugh or a yell of celebration. But that real response creates a human response back from the audience and continues to surge dopamine and oxytocin in our body. And then that person steps up to the microphone and makes a clear, concise call to action and asks folks to give generously today. And now we're ready for the collection. So we've told an impactful story. We've released that oxytocin. We've created that sense of emotional relevance and connection. Now it is time to move into the collection. And we can do this either passively, which is like an envelope on a table, or actively, which is the paddle up. An active paddle raise will always raise more money. But when we move into that paddle raise, we want to make sure that we don't open up and hear crickets. We want to create mirror neurons responding, which is when we show people it's easy to do, other people do it. We want to have a pre-committed pledge in advance with a paddle going up so the audience knows immediately that this is something that people are committed to, are giving to, they can trust this organization, and they want to be a part of it. So first, we need to have pre-committed gifts. At a bare minimum for any paddle raise, you want to make sure you have your first 3 gifts pre-committed. That allows you to know your starting level, and it allows you to set up some matching gift challenges, which are those superhero moments where you could highlight a donor that has taken the lead in a commitment or throw out a challenge to match that donor. You can even acknowledge corporate matches in that. So let me walk through how this might look for you. If you've never done a paddle raise before, here's an example from an organization where we took a look at their giving map the year before. Now, they had done an envelope the year before, and they had had 1 donor at $1,000. They had had 2 at $500, 4 at $250, 3 at $100, and most of their donors in the envelope collection had given at the $50 level. Our goal was to move critical mass. We wanted to design a paddle raise that taught donors that this was easy to do and move critical mass. So the first thing the organization did was secure from a foundation a matching gift challenge of $10,000. But asking an audience who had never given that much to donate at $10,000 level could leave crickets in the room. So we held on to that $10,000 and instead secured a pre-committed gift of $1,000 and another pre-committed gift of $500 so that we knew we had some momentum. And then when we kicked off the appeal, we kicked off at the $1,000 level, and our pre-committed gift, Joan, a board member, raised her paddle first. And when she raised her paddle, our auctioneer said, Joan is kicking us off today in hopes that we can find 1 other donor to match. That simple call to action of 1 other donor led to a hero moment, an opportunity for someone to show up and match, and they did. Now we have some energy and momentum, and we go to the $500 level, and we already know we have 1 paddle going up. But because we've hit a tipping point and we have that energy, 4 paddles go up. Now we're on a roll, and we move to $250 and 6 paddles go up. And at the $100 level, we announce first, this is our last level of giving. So it is critical that if folks want to be recognized giving, we're telling them that this is their chance to do so. But the second thing that we did was we offered the $10,000 matching challenge here and said, we have an opportunity with a foundation to match every $100 gift up to $10,000. That means we need 100 paddles in the air. And we got 124 paddles. It was a lot of paddle collection, but you can see that they moved the year before from just about $4,000 to almost $28,000 the next year, simply by having some strategy, by having some pre-committed gifts, throwing out a match or a challenge to the audience that allowed for a hero moment, created something that is collective effervescence. It is this idea that when we come together, we can be more than just the single. It is an idea that is by Emile Durkheim, a French philosopher, and he was taking a look at communities or societies at a time of coming together can simultaneously communicate the same thought and participate in the same action. And when they do so, it creates more than the single. It creates a unifying group. And that is what we are trying to do in a paddle race, in a collection moment. So first we have a really compelling story. Then we have a clear ask, and then we have that collection moment, the opportunity to mobilize our audience, invite people in, show people how it's done, have the mirror neurons bounce around, and replicate this over and over as everyone participates. So before I dive into how to now take that into $1 million transformation, I want to show you how this works. If you've never seen a paddle race, I think it's important to see it mapped out. So let's see if we can get this video to play. Nope. Try it again.
Are you fired up to raise some money for North by Northeast tonight? Folks, we've come to a very special part of our program, and what I'd like to do is ask everyone to get really quiet at this moment. So if we can get everyone real quiet right here, right now.
We got the opportunity now to share the story of a fantastic partnership with one of our North by Northeast family members. Please turn your attention to the screens to learn more.
My mother and my father are civil rights workers. They very much instilled in us the importance of standing up for each other. When I first got diagnosed with high blood pressure, I was in here every 3 weeks. That's the day they saved my life. I knew I was going to be okay because you trusted this place. They really helped save people's lives, and I think there's a lot more lives we can save and reach.
Community, it is my honor to introduce a North by Northeast patient, friend, family member, and a member of our Patient Wellness Council, Abigail Lawrence.
Thank you, Jamal. Thank you very much, and thank you all for being part of my family. Being cared for by North by Northeast feels so good. And because of North by Northeast, I feel like Black health matters in this community. I want our important work together to continue and thrive. You make all of that possible. You make all of that possible with your generosity, and I ask that you give all that you can. And thank you for saving my life.
This is the moment where we all get to come together and give generously. So here we go. We're going to start off at the $5,000 level. We have levels of giving for everyone in the room tonight. So first level is at $5,000. Who out there would like to make a gift at the $5,000 level? Bidder number 198 at $5,000. Bidder number 105, that's the Frank Foundation. Bidder number 102, Dr. Johnson. Thank you very much. I want to hear a roaring round of applause for all of our donors at the $5,000 level. The Collins Foundation wants to ignite some generosity. They will match the first 4 new gifts at $2,500. Your gift will be doubled. We'd love to have your support. Bidder number 207, bidder number 191, bidder number 161, bidder number 332. For anyone that gives it $500 tonight, you'll be entered to win a beautiful pair of diamond earrings. Our final level of giving tonight is at the $20 level, and in honor of Pastor Mary, Dr. Joel Ginsburg and Dr. Louise Clark will match every single gift given at $20. Oh my gosh, it's a sea of beautiful hands in the air. Smile real big, everyone. You're going to get your picture taken. Bidder number 104 is giving 5 times, and just for the record, that's Dr. Louise Clark. She's going to match her own gift, and I like it. Folks, tonight in our appeal, I'm really excited to announce that we raised $64,000.
Hey.
Y'all, a big roaring round of applause to each and every one of you. That was incredible.
So let's move that into $1 million paddle raise and look at the strategies that are being deployed right now by so many organizations to really invite people in to participate in incredible ways. There's a couple of key elements I want to talk about in this. The first is that we still need those pre-committed pledges. But the difference in $1 million ask is that we're doing a small campaign in advance of the event. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to identify a campaign partner, someone who can help us as an anchor gift that then we can use to leverage multiple times in multiple ways. We also want to leverage their relationships to help us in that outreach. So we are going to have a single anchor gift that gets multiple matches attached to it before and in advance of the event. And as we lay this out, the key element that we need to make sure that we have in place in advance are prospects at every level. So sometimes an anchor gift can be as big as $500,000. Sometimes it is $100,000 gift, but it's a big gift. It's a single large contributor that we build our platform off of. Then, as we are doing our initial asks before the event, we are looking to mobilize as many gifts in advance that are at the $10,000 level and higher, maybe even to the $5,000 level. Because if we have some of these gifts lined up in advance, they can be recognized, celebrated, but we also know we have a clear path to our $1 million goal. We would use this when we feel like it is time to do a big, bold thing, when we are ready to make an audacious, bold ask to move our donors and invite our biggest contributors in to be a part of the strategy. So how does that look? Where do we begin? First, step one, secure an anchor gift. This gift is someone that really has the capacity to, one, make a large gift, like an extremely generous gift, larger than they've made before, but also is someone who is willing to participate with you in the outreach, in the solicitation, who's cheering you on and is mobilizing their community to support you. The language that we use typically when we're securing this gift is we are building a campaign around this year's event with a goal to raise $1 million. Your gift will be the foundation or the anchor that establishes credibility and builds trust with other donors. We are going to leverage your commitment to inspire multiple matching gifts, multiplying your impact many times over. That's the key. One donor with an extremely generous gift that we can now leverage over and over again. Step two, once we have identified who that person is, then we start to build out our prospect map of what their anchor donor level is and who can begin to match them. In this case, I want to use a $100,000 donor. I want to identify a single anchor gift of $100,000 and map out where we have donors who can start to show up and combine their giving to match over and over again. Now, in this particular scenario, I, in this organization, have the prospect of multiple anchor gifts, multiple people that can give at the $100,000 level. I also have a couple of donors that can give at 50 or 25. They are gifts that we've seen them give to other organizations. They are gifts that they've indicated by way of their other giving pattern that they have the capacity. Now we have to engage them in the strategy. So the second step is to build out that prospect map. It's our chance to really start to identify who are the people we're going after at each level, where do we have holes that we need to fill, and then we can leverage that anchor donor in conversations about how to secure yeses from these donors. The goal being that if we have a single anchor gift at $100,000, then perhaps in our strategy, we could have another donor that equally matches them with similar capacity and investment in mission at another $100,000 gift. And maybe those two people giving 100 might motivate two people to give at 50, and might motivate 4 people to give at 25, and might motivate 5 people to give at 20,000. The idea being that we are using collective impact to hit audacious goals. And we're showing that other people are investing in high levels to be influential. Once we have that mapped out, then it is time to start securing the gifts. And as we secure the gifts, I always recommend you start at the top levels and work your way down. Because if you are targeting 2 gifts at $50,000 and one of those gifts says no, you don't just want to simply backfill the hole. Now you're missing that match strategy. You want to figure out who else might be able to give at that level. So start at the top levels that you've prospected and begin to make bold asks. Leverage your anchor gift donor. Leverage their name. Maybe even leverage them by having them join you in a conversation. But when you bring your donor into the strategy, it shows that you are invested in making their money go further. It shows that you are leveraging strategy to secure giving. And it helps to build momentum because now people are starting to talk about this audacious goal. And now your donor is interested in figuring out how their goal, or how that $1 million goal is going to get reached, leveraging their $100,000 gift. Once you've secured your top gifts, the last step before your event is to secure some of those middle tier gifts. Some of those gifts that range between $5,000 and $15,000 that are the opportunity to keep the momentum going. But generally, what we find is that in the room, once we have acknowledged these strategies and acknowledged these big donors at the top level, we have raised the bar and now we bring everyone else on board. And typically surprise giving starts to show up in this range, this mid-tier range where we'll get surprise gifts of $10,000 or $5,000. So now it's time to choreograph the night of your event. Now that you have those big gifts lined up, the first thing that you are going to do is celebrate and recognize that tonight we have bold, audacious goals. Then you're going to acknowledge that one generous donor stepped up as your anchor gift to be able to build a strategy off of. Then you're going to acknowledge each of those matches you've already secured. And then you're going to move into those paddle raise moments where as you go level by level from the top tier down, you start to mobilize that goal of $100,000 at each level to generate support. So by the time you get to that $5,000 level, you need 20 gifts at that level to match $100K. When you're at the $10,000 level, you need 10 gifts at that level to match $100K. So the goal is that at every giving level, you're challenging the audience and mobilizing their support in order to generate as much generosity as possible. Now, everyone that we have deployed this strategy with, they have identified about $250,000 that is in pre-event revenue, sponsorships, tickets, table sales, maybe even a raffle or a single auction item. That means that in the room that night, they're raising with this strategy somewhere between $700,000 and $900,000. Typically, not every penny is raised in the room, but they're using this campaign as their push to generate as much as possible. In some cases, we have seen people raise $1.3 million. In other cases, we've seen them fall slightly short at $950,000 and then use it as a close the gap campaign after their event to help them reach that bold $1 million goal. We even had one organization that was $20,000 shy of their goal, and the anchor donor moved through the room during the end of the event during the social hour and gathered additional gifts to get them to that $1 million goal in real time. We recommend using a thermometer because that thermometer shows your progress toward this audacious goal, and it gets us all as participants on board with understanding how to mobilize and push donor giving and engage collective action. Now, to help you in your campaign strategy, I recommend putting together a tracking document that shows those gifts you're trying to secure in advance, those pledges that you're going to work on in advance, and engage your board in that strategy. Engage your board by reporting out to them every month with who has confirmed and how many gaps you have at each giving level. Clearly outline how many you're trying to secure in advance of the event and engage them in helping you to get there. This sort of shared reporting structure we have found actualizes the gifts because we start to see board members fill in the gap. We start to see that they combine their own corporate giving. It also starts to mobilize folks like your anchor donors to engage their community and their friends. Ultimately, what we're encouraging is that this is a small campaign that you run in advance of the event, that then on the night of, you mobilize your audience to take action. And in mobilizing them to take action, you're now inviting them to be a part of helping you reach these big, bold, audacious goals. 2 things I recommend that you have that you don't want to leave out. 1, you need a software that allows you to pre-assign bidder numbers. And 2, you need a fundraising auctioneer or host that understands how to deploy strategy. Those are 2 critical pieces of the puzzle, because if you leave that out, the strategy gets muddy and confusing to donors. But when you clearly articulate in advance to your donors what the goal is and how you're going to get there, you have a path to reach $1 million with your event. So that's lots of information. Hopefully, if nothing else, we've encouraged you to think of a paddle raise for your event. But I want to leave some time to answer any questions we have, any questions that have come up for you, any confusion, because it's some big ideas. So drop a note in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll jump into any questions. Thank you, Christy. Christy says it's invaluable information. Hopefully this gives you some strategy to apply. If you want help with your strategy, just reach out to us. We're happy to help you craft that. Understanding your donor base and developing kind of prospects is a key element for sure. Any questions? I don't see any questions. Oh, Carmen. Often I've seen keynote speeches before the auction and paddle race to tell stories and get folks engaged. Why after? Great question. Carmen, we always recommend putting it after because sometimes a keynote speaker can send your program messaging sideways. It is saying that their message, their work is more important than yours, than your mission. I've seen keynote speakers. In fact, we had an organization we were working with, I think it was at the time Planned Parenthood, and they had a keynote speaker that came and she talked about her work with NARAL, another organization that does similar work, but a different organization. So putting it in front of your fundraising allows you to control your message all the way into your fundraising. And then after your fundraising, you can have those other elements. Sherry says, if the anchor gift is not an actual matching gift, how did you describe the match? A matching of generosity? Yeah, I think when we are talking to the anchor donor, the strategy is we want to leverage this gift to invite other people to join you in giving. So we want to see this gift matched over and over and over again. Matching doesn't have to be 1-to-1. Matching can be 10-to-1. But we want to leverage that generosity to motivate other people to join you. And by laying out this strategy, oftentimes I've seen that anchor gift, you can even tell them that, like, we would like for you to be the anchor to our strategy. That anchor gift oftentimes can generate an investment in seeing the other gifts come to fruition. So if you have someone that is really engaged in philanthropy and really engaged with giving and strategy, oftentimes that donor who is providing your anchor gift will help you secure the other gifts as well. Hopefully that helps answer your question, Sherry. Okay, let's see. Christine Jones, what was the second thing after software? Oh, you want to make sure that you have a auctioneer, a host that can host the strategy. Nowadays, a lot of auctioneers, because auctions have become less popular, a lot of auctioneers are just doing paddle raises. There's a couple that we love and recommend working with, Kelly Russell at Artisan Auctions, Dale Johannes at DC Auctions, Tawana Kinney at Stellar Auctions, Greg Kuroga at Stellar Fundraising, Reggie Rivers at the Gala team, all great auctioneers who really understand how to apply strategy. Oh, also Aaron Ward of Star Benefit Auctions on the East Coast. Amanda says, you mentioned having a social component afterwards. Can you expand on that a little? Yeah, typically we'll leave room afterwards for folks to continue to stay and socialize, eat, have dessert, dance, even elements that are sort of just pure entertainment. Like you could have a performance. But typically you want to leave time for people to connect. You'll have about a third of your audience get up and leave as soon as your program is over. We want to encourage people to get home and get to soft pants. Absolutely. But if they want to stay, we want to give them that chance to socialize a little bit more. So sometimes it's just setting a vibe, having good lighting and music, and allowing people to stick around and keeping the bars open. But having sort of that connection opportunity it's powerful for people. Rachel says, my organization works overseas, so the live storytelling aspect of the ask is almost impossible to execute. Do you have ideas that can work for us? That's a great question, Rachel. We have a lot of organizations that we've worked with like that. You could have your single storyteller does not have to be a client. Your single storyteller could be a partner that you work with, that your work has allowed for them to have their mission come true. It could be a donor who has traveled abroad to see your work in action. It could be a volunteer who's volunteered for your work. So one person's story that demonstrates why your work is important is the key element, or one unit, as Cheering and Koshi recently said in a training, one story of a family or of a teacher. But you do definitely want to make sure that you get a single story. If they're unable to join you on stage, you could have your fundraising auctioneer do the ask. But when they're in the room, it's really powerful. It can be powerful for them as well. Hopefully that helps. Tim asks, will the slides be provided? We don't send the slides, but we record this and we will send you the video recording, so you'll have access to that. Emily, with auctions, how do you recommend nonprofits find out who their donor base would be a good anchor donor if you don't have a history of hosting a paddle raise? That's a great question. And I think the first thing to take a look at is the history in your donor base of who some of your biggest donors are. It may be that in your organization, you're building a strategy for $250,000 and your anchor donor is $25,000 or $10,000. But this strategy of leveraging one single big donor who perhaps has given multiple times before or has given a large gift before, whether it be in a mail campaign, whether it has been a board member who has made a large contribution. The two things that I typically look for when trying to identify an anchor donor is someone who gives repeatedly, because that shows investment, it shows interest, and someone who has indication of capacity. So perhaps they give you monthly $25 a month, but in your year in giving campaign 3 years ago, they gave you a $5,000 gift. That would be someone that I would look at for an anchor gift strategy. And I would invite them in and ask them, if I'm looking for a big, bold gift, what's the largest gift that you could make to our mission? And have them help you craft it. Hopefully that helps, Emily. Beth says, do you recommend social time before and after the program or just after? Definitely before and after. We usually have an hour before, then we seat everyone, and then an hour after. Sometimes some organizations, it's a family reunion and it's worth even having 90 minutes before because people want to get all those hellos and highs and connections out. But those connections are just as powerful and important reasons for gathering. So yes. Chrissy says, should we offer the donor the anchor or matching gift options or choose before we ask them? I think that you're looking to co-create with your big donor. So coming to them with a strategy in mind, yes. asking them to get involved in that strategy and asking them if they would be willing to be an anchor gift. They might have to think about that. They might have to say, let me get back to you on that. They might even go secure you another donor to join them in their giving. But I am a big believer in having a strategy before you talk to your donor and then co-creating it with them. All right. Well, friends, it looks like we are at the top of the hour. I hope this inspired you to start thinking about your event as a key leverage point. It is that opportunity to create collective effervescence. We have this recorded and we will send it to you. And we also have a number of case studies that you can take a look at that we will include in that email as well, so that you can take a look at this as well as taking a look at some written up case studies and some audio storytelling through some podcasts. So hopefully this has been helpful to inspire you to, one, include a paddle raise, and two, leverage that paddle raise as a campaign to maximize your giving. We wish you the best in your fundraising, and thank you for joining us today.